Hello, my food and mood friends. Welcome back. Chandra's Us, then Odyssey, food and mood, body, mind coaching, Outlive. I got this book from my man. I've actually been advised not to call him my man because of, political gender reasons, but we really like to call each other woman and man instead of husband and wife, but it's just our thing, so. Anyway, that's a small little side note into our life. But I love calling him my man. He's my man. So actually, so to go a little bit farther down this road, in Israel, where he's from, the word husband actually means owner, which I'm and he are totally not into. So I don't know what the thing is with man, calling him my man, but like I'm totally independent, I'm respected, and I'm a woman, and he's my man. Anyway, my man bought me this book, Outlive by Peter Tia, The Science and Art of Longevity, for my birthday.
Welcome! Here is your hostess and coach, Chandra Zas, helping people make food and mood changes doable without missing out. Go ahead, high five that like button, subscribe and share while you're there.
And so if that helps you know anything about me, I'm so into health. Like if there's I really prioritize spending my time with my little one, and then spending time with friends in person is like one of my favorite things to do. And then if there's time where I watch TV or read, it is pretty much always health. Sometimes I get into some romantic comedies or some romantic dramas. I love love. And I love relationships, so that kind of floats my boat sometimes. Bridgerton is one of my favorite episodes. It's a TV series. There's a third one coming out soon. I'm excited. But mostly, like, I will read health, or I will watch health documentaries. It's like what I really love to, like, when I want to kind of chill. Like, that's still what I like to put in my brain. So I wasn't totally surprised, and also he and I like really do share a value and a passion and a prioritization towards health. We both really love it. It's one thing that we're extremely aligned on. Not on every aspect of health. Like I would say he's much better at exercising. Exercising is like one of my weaknesses. You've heard me talk about it before. Although I am dancing, I'm like really like trying to figure out how can I bring fun into my workouts. So I'm working on that, and actually dancing doing some HIIT dance workouts on YouTube have been really great. Highly recommend it. And yeah, he's like way better exercising. Food, we're like extremely on the same page, which is just such a blessing. And yeah, we also love, like, one of the things, like, we listen to podcasts together, and we listen to podcasts together. It's always about health. He listens to other stuff, and I listen to a couple other things, mostly like coaching stuff, but health is like our big main thing that we both really have in common and both really love. So he bought me this book. I think he partly bought it for himself. I think he's also very excited about reading it, but he's letting me read it first. And I opened it up the first night, and I snuggled in bed, and I read the table of contents, and then I saw that the last chapter was on emotions. And I later learned from him, when I was like, yeah, I read the emotions chapter last night, and he was like, oh yeah, they were talking about on the podcast that's like one of the talked about, or like I guess maybe that's the chapter that Peter's talking a lot about. Peter, the author, Peter Tia.
Hello, my friend. How are you? I'm in the Dead Sea, floating in the water. Go ahead and like and share and follow so we can keep in touch.
And so he was talking about how like he was kind of like laughing and not surprised that that's the chapter I flipped to, because I'm all about emotions. Like I feel like emotions are just so dang important. Like I spent the first half of my life really repressing them and trying to escape them and getting pretty miserable, living pretty miserable. And so for me, like, so much of my health journey is centered around my emotional journey, and that was really what got me out of my depression. Also food changes, but like a really big piece was the emotional component of like not resisting them. And really, so the way that I really think about emotions is like how we're in relationship to them, what we're doing, how we're responding or reacting to them, what we're thinking and feeling about them. Are we thinking that this is bad and I shouldn't feel this way? Are we realizing this is life and there's hard emotions and this is a normal human experience. And so that relationship is our thoughts and feelings about our emotions, which then are like ultimately our relationship with them, how we are with them. And so I really I love skipping to his last chapter and reading that first. I like to read last chapters anyway first, but this one particularly was great because it was about emotions. And I really love the way he wrote the chapter. He talked about like that this was the one chapter here he was the patient and not the doctor, and he talked about how he labeled the chapter work in progress. And then he also says something in the beginning of the book, I think it's in the intro. He says, "Finally, as I learned the hard way, striving for physical health and longevity is meaningless if we ignore our emotional health. Emotional suffering can decimate our health on all fronts, and it must be addressed." And I just really love that he's like talking about this and saying all this and also sharing his emotional journey. And from what I gather so far of reading his book and understanding his story is that his emotional kind of awakening or relationship or conscious relationship, those are my words, started more at the end of, in the more recent time of his life. So, and I think he's over 50. So he spent the first part of his life like as a doctor, making exercise changes, food changes, doing all the things, but not really. And what he shares is like healing and addressing some of the traumas that happened in his childhood, which most of us have traumas that happened and most of us stuff them down. And one of the things I really like to help with my clients is like, we can't actually get rid of or avoid our emotions, like resisting them, avoiding them. It doesn't work. It just pushes them down into our body. And I like to call it issues in our tissues. My coaching teacher, she talks about the concept of pain now or pain later, that we don't actually ever get to like avoid it completely. And I really try to help my clients help get their brain on board, because our brain's default is to avoid emotional pain. So like that's all of our natural, like our brain wants us to survive, and it's got the motivational triad: avoid pain, seek pleasure, seek ease or comfort. And so avoiding emotional pain is part of our brain's wiring, so we have to overcome that default, avoid, resist, and we actually have to do the opposite consciously, intentionally, and lean in and feel it. And, it's actually quite simple, except for that there's a part of that it's just not natural or normal for us. And so once you start taking on the practice of leaning in and feeling your emotions, then it becomes really easy. It's that switch over. It's that habit shift from default resist to oh, there's an emotion here. Let me lean in and feel it. I personally am actually going through a lot of emotions lately. And at the moment, this month, I actually have in my calendar twice a week for a couple hours space and intentional time where I go and feel my feelings. I either go take a hot tub. For me, being in the water is a really great place for me to feel. And sometimes I go for a long walk without any input, without any audio or music or anything, just with myself and my thoughts and my feelings. Sometimes I'll go sit in nature, sit on the ground. I live next to the Truckee River, so I sit next to the river a lot, and just give myself that space to clear out and process whatever emotions are going on for me. And lately, I've been doing a lot of grief work. I started working with my owl, I call him, my psychologist, who I worked with over the years. And he's really been encouraging me to do grief work. And wow, grief work is not fun. It's hard. It's really hard. And I definitely resist it a lot. But I know that when I resist it, I start to get depressed and I start to get really heavy. And one of the other things that I was talking with a couple of my clients this week of when we don't feel our feelings, it's we're kind of full. We're at capacity. We don't have space inside of ourselves. And so when we feel our feelings, we have more space. We have literally we're less clogged up with emotions. And when we're clogged up, we're irritated and frustrated. And when we're spacious, we have more patience, we have more compassion. Like, who doesn't want more patience and compassion? Like, it makes me think of when I've done a few week-long plus meditation retreats. And I remember one time, my mom lives right next to one of them. And this is when I was in college, like nearly 20 years ago. And I did a Vipassana, I think just before Christmas. I think it maybe ended on Christmas. And then I was hanging out with my mom and she was like, wow, you're so easy to be around. And I was just thinking about that comment this week of like, there's a big difference. Like, in Vipassana, like what I did that week was like process so much emotion. Like there was no input. It was just me and my brain and my emotions. They like talk a lot about it with like some samskaras and like the energies of our bodies. I mean, I felt so much energy move through my body that week. It was crazy. Emotions, energy, whatever it was. And at the end of it, I mean, the first 4 days were like hell, like really, really, really hard. But then around day 7, things started feeling like really light and beautiful. And by day 10, it was just like, I felt like a new person. I just felt totally cleaned out and refreshed and like light. And I think a big part of that was just like not having the input, which is actually interesting. Now I'm thinking about it with food of like when we stop taking in so much toxins. So when we stop taking in so much stimulation, then it's like it gives our body the opportunity to process and heal and rebalance. I didn't actually make that connection. I think that there is a connection between like intaking food and intaking stimulation, like, thoughts and stories and events and all these things that input. Like being in a meditation retreat, there's no input. Like you're literally just in this like very simple, almost no stimulation experience. And you're just with yourself, which is kind of the maddening, crazy part of it. Because it's like all the stuff that we like to escape. I remember traveling and like realizing like I come across the world and like all my shit's still here with me. It's like until we process it and we let it go and we lean into it and we have a practice of really being in an emotionally healthy place, which is basically just instead of resisting and avoiding, we lean in and we feel. And yeah, it's really, really rewarding. It's really, really rewarding. It's not fun work, but it is so rewarding and so refreshing. And as Peter Tia says, it's without it, the rest doesn't really matter. And so it's like really cool to have him like say it from his perspective, because the way that I built my program is to work on the emotion piece first. So understanding that our brain creates emotions and that we have options of how we respond and react to our emotions. And so I call it like an internal management system, that we get to have a different way of being with our internal reality, which helps us need the external vices, the external dopamine hits like food or junk food or over caffeinating or over smoking or over drinking or all of the over watching, over scrolling, over, whatever we're doing to escape our emotions. When we understand how our emotions work, then we need those less. So instead of just saying like, eat less, stop overeating, it's like, well, let's look at why you're overeating. I was just talking to someone who has a really big sugar problem, and I can hear in him like all of this tension, and it's like, well, where we start is with your emotions. We don't actually start with the food. We start with, why are you eating? Why are you overeating? Why are you like so hooked on this sugar habit? So thank you for your time and attention. If you're wanting to do this work, come find me. It's the most rewarding work ever for both of us. And I'll see you next time in my next video, and have a beautiful day and feel those feelings.